Crime Writers On is the podcast where authors and journalists talk about the latest true crime series, documentaries, and podcasts.
We talk about what's on the charts and find those up-and-coming podcasts that you'll be talking about.
It's like a fun and smart book club discussing what makes good storytelling and teaching how to become a critical listener.
Or not. And stick around for the Crime Writers thumbs up, thumbs down reviews.
It's the original true crime review podcast. Crime Writers On, wherever you get your podcasts.
Like probably right here.
Romantic comedies have a lot of similarities. There's a protagonist who can't seem to find love, there's a meet-cute, and a montage of falling in love despite seemingly insurmountable circumstances and sometimes zany scenarios. But then there's one obstacle that may be too insurmountable to overcome, and that leads to a breakup. Then there's a period of sadness, and of course, a realization that the protagonist wants to be with their person forever. And at some point, someone will run to their person, set to an uplifting score. We all know the formula. It's familiar and people love it. But the other thing rom-coms have in common is that they often feature two heterosexual leads. As a matter of fact, before Billy Eichner wrote this movie, there had only been 3 other queer rom-coms produced by major legacy movie studios. And after Fire Island, this is only the second one to have an openly LGBTQ principal cast. Once again, it's a familiar story. But this time, both of the leads are bros. I'm Ronald Young Jr., and I'm leaving the theater. All right, this is Ronald, and I am leaving the theater after seeing Bros. Written by Billy Eichner and Nicholas Stoller, directed by Nicholas Stoller, starring Billy Eichner, Luke Macfarlane, T.S. Madison, Monica Raymond, Guillermo Diaz, Guy Branum, Amanda Bearse, Jim Rash, and Bowen Yang. And for a complete list of the cast, check the link in the show notes. I'm not here by myself. I'm here with
Ben Angeloni. Damn, no love for Miss Lawrence on that cast list.
Just literally
left her off.
It literally says, for a complete list of the cast, check the link in the show notes.
Every single other one of them. Okay.
Listen, there's a we gotta
T.S. Madison above Miss Lawrence.
I go by the Wikipedia page. So the Wikipedia page
is homophobic.
There you go. Go ahead. Go ahead Wait. All right, we'll get into it. So for those that don't know, Bros is a romantic. We can hang out here. Bros is a romantic comedy, of course, written by Billy Eichner, starring Billy Eichner, and man, I already forgot the other guy's name. Macfarlane.
Luke Macfarlane?
Yeah, Luke Macfarlane, yes. So in this movie, it follows all the beats of most heteronormative. See what I did there? Yeah. Most heteronormative romantic comedies, in that, you know, Billy Eichner is a successful person. He's in New York, but he hasn't found love, and he meets Luke Macfarlane, and what follows is a romance tale of romance. We don't have to worry about there being a special Patreon episode for this, because in a lot of ways, it follows the beats of a very heteronormative romantic comedy. Yeah, I couldn't even say rom-com now, but romantic comedy. With that in mind, what did you think?
You know, I liked it. I thought it was really hilarious. I thought all the humor hit really great places. Obviously, there's like certain things we can dissect and go into. But overall, yeah, I thought it was a really great kind of first effort of this kind of story that you haven't necessarily seen. You've seen parts of it, like you said, but there were definitely like coded parts that I think for the queer community in ways that sometimes, black moviegoers will see in specifically black-made movies, where it's kind of like, okay, are we opening our community up to other people? Will they understand all these references? Do they have to understand the references, or is there stuff in there that's like just for us,
I like that because you immediately make me think of like Black Panther it's always one of those things where I'm like,
don't compare Bros to Black Panther.
No.
Whoever's listening, don't make that assumption at all. That is not what Ron is trying to say.
The only comparison there is that as a movie that's like very cultural, there's going to be a lot of references in there and I feel like for me, I always watch a movie like Black Panther and I immediately get protective. Was there any parts of you watching this movie that you felt like, that's not for the straights?
Yeah, I definitely, I was going to bring that up later. There were a couple scenes, some of the sex scenes I felt like were like leaning in a little bit too much. And they were a little bit too like, hey, let's explain how gay people do things, right? We want to make sure y'all know it's a little bit different in our bedroom. So let's, lean into the raunch and let's lean into the, not BDSM, but, kind of the alternative sexual lifestyle that, kind of made me feel a little bit iffy, not like uncomfortable, like watching a sex scene with your parents, but just a little bit like, okay, we didn't have to go that far.
That's fair. I feel like there was a few times watching it where I wondered, I'm like, is this a queer movie made for straight people? And I felt like, and I was sitting there and I'm like, man, I hope I'm not contributing to the problem by just being in the room. Cause how like there's places like, there's sanctified black space where it's like, y'all don't need to be in here. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I had a moment in there where I'm like, well, obviously they know, watching Bros, I'm like, they know I'm here. And I say that because Nicholas Stoller directed it. And Nicholas Stoller also directed Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Get Him to the Greek, The 5-Year Engagement, Neighbors, and he created one of my favorite underrated shows, Friends from College, which on Netflix, if you don't know about it, stars Keegan-Michael Key and a bunch of other people.
I've literally never seen any of those movies.
You have? What if I told you that you have?
I haven't.
See, now, no, I'm telling you. That's what I'm saying.
Which one?
I'm not saying that you haven't seen it on purpose. I'm saying, saying
okay.
Based on, because I think that was my biggest thing, was sitting here and saying, I understand why they got Nicholas Stoller for this. I understand why Judd Apatow was directing this, because I feel like in a lot of ways they were really like, if we're going to do this, we got to nail a home run. And that's how I felt about Black Panther.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of it was kind of intentional tongue-in-cheek, right?
Yeah.
Like, I definitely saw a lot of that in the film. And I think they really leaned into a lot of that, like, we know straight people are watching. I mean, I think they acknowledge it in all the trailers, especially, like, the setup of an agent telling him he needs to make a rom-com that straight people can watch. It's very, like, almost meta, even though I hate that word. It's, like, really the best way to describe it, right, is it's, like, and I think there was a lot of like winks to the audience in the movie. Like there was a lot of breaking the fourth wall, I think.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the strengths. I think this movie is extremely well written. I think and when I say that, I mean specifically with the jokes and the punchlines.
Right.
I mean, we know Billy Eichner from Billy on the Street. He was in Difficult People on Hulu. He's been in a lot of things. And him showing up in this with his pen is strong. And his punchlines were fantastic. What did you think of the writing?
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious. I was laughing once every 2 or 3 minutes. I could definitely tell it was a Judd Apatow film. It definitely like felt like it, where it kind of like borders on the line of like almost too much, right? Like it doesn't cross into like South Park, dick and boobs and fart jokes.
Yeah.
But it's almost like that same kind of comedy where you're like just at the line without going over.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt the same. I felt like there was a sense of restraint, I would say, in some cases. In some cases not, I would say, but for the most part, I think there was some thought of restraint while doing this. But I also feel I think the thought that wouldn't go away was that I'm like, the movie was still pretty white.
And when I say that, I mean like, and I don't mean by the inclusion, and we saw the choices that they intentionally made in terms of casting it, even like by having what equates to the United Nations of LGBT running the actual the museum. But
the
like
colors of Benetton or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's like literally every LBGTNQ was in the that room.
I actually think that was part of the joke.
Yeah.
If you think about it,
Yeah.
like, because I saw that as part of the joke, because you could tell like most of the on-screen characters and the main characters with names were all white and cis
Yeah.
and like able-bodied, well-bodied, whatever,
Yeah.
right? And I think that was part of like the commentary. Is they're like, every time we include somebody else's voices, it's like for comedy,
Yeah.
or it's we got to make sure we're filling out this equation or checking
Yeah.
a box. We got to make sure we have one non-binary person and one trans black woman and one,
Yeah.
bisexual. The guy that kept making the joke over and over again that bisexuals are overlooked.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was kind of part of it. I really resonated with the fact that. So I think that, I guess it's not a spoiler that part of the story is Billy Eichner trying to feel like he is attractive enough or fit enough
Yeah.
to fit into the gay culture and be somebody that's desired by gays. And that's totally something that I obviously identify with and things that we've heard a million times. But I think what actually makes it more powerful and real is the fact that Billy Eichner, before this movie, was like the schlubby, like not super attractive, not super like well-known, famous, kind of B-list, C-list, who kind of like enters when there's big celebrities around and kind of makes a big deal out of that. But then like he actually like, when did he get sexy? Like I don't remember the moment where I like realized like, holy shit, he's really hot. But he did that for this movie. And I don't know if it was for that movie or if it's just something he's doing in his life or what. But I think that parallel of like setting himself up for this movie definitely played into some of the plot of the movie.
What did you think of Luke? So we both agree that Billy Eichner did a great job. What did you think of Luke Macfarlane? Between 2015 and 2015 and 2022, Luke Macfarlane had 12 Hallmark movies, 12, in which he was the love interest. And this movie takes a lot of shots at Hallmark. What did you think of Luke Macfarlane's performance? Macfarlane.
I thought he was great. I thought he, obviously, like, he's attractive as hell. You can't, like, not look at him when he's on screen, right? And I haven't seen much of his catalog. I know he used to be on Brothers and Sisters, and my mom would, like, call me every Sunday and be like, oh, they had a great storyline with the really hot guy. And again, I think that's like part of the movie is that you have this guy that's just basically like eye candy, and you're like, okay, well, if somebody who is not attractive can feel self-conscious about not attractive, can somebody attractive be self-conscious about like not being more substantial or smarter or funnier or any of those kind of things, right? So I think that it hit on those issues very well with the casting of him. And he's delightful. I thought there's a lot of moments in the movie that made me, and kind of feel like, oh, I'm really rooting for them. Like, I want this relationship to work. And it's more of that, like, oh, I want to be in a relationship like that and be like really cute and stuff like that. Or, do I care about these characters because they're like well developed,
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, I think that he was playing an archetype. And I guess I'm curious if that was on purpose. And I'm like, and I guess I say that because, like, I thought in a lot of ways he was pretty forgettable. Like, I didn't think his performance was as strong as Billy Eichner's. And I know there was parts of the personalities in which they're supposed to be very different. And there was definitely parts where the two certainly had chemistry going back and forth, which, like, that was undeniable. And I think the part that actually gets me about his performance is that I'm not sure if in embracing the archetype, it just showed up as an archetype. Because I think that's part of what I was watching it. I didn't, without thinking about it, just watching a romantic comedy, sitting here watching in front of me, it just felt like when it got to the end, I thought to myself, well, that could have been anybody, like for Billy Eichner. Because I'm like, really, the story is the journey that Billy Eichner's on. You know what I mean? Like,
but isn't that kind of like what rom-coms are all about? Like, right? Isn't that just like, not Renee Zellweger. What's the chick who was in Sweet Home Alabama?
Oh, you're Reese Witherspoon.
Reese Witherspoon. Like,
Yeah.
isn't it just like a Reese Witherspoon movie
Yeah.
or any of those other like Hallmark Channel movies that we're
Yeah.
talking about where it's like the same Candace Burr, whatever her
Yeah.
name is, like,
Candace Cameron Burr.
thank you. It is forgettable, right? And it's
Yeah.
like the same storyline repackaged over and over again.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's like, I'm trying to find a good comparison, but it's kind of like, like junk food, right? Like it's not good
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
not going to stay
It's
with you
familiar.
for a long time.
Yeah.
But it's familiar.
Yeah.
And in that moment, it makes you really happy
Yeah.
and enjoyable, right?
Yeah.
And like, isn't that what an escape to the movies is for some of the time,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to that. I think I guess that was the most prevailing thought I had towards the end of the movie was, I mean, it was very predictable, which I think we know, and I think that's the part where I get torn on with saying, I know, again, that y'all had to hit a home run for this because the last thing you want is for people to say it wasn't good. Yeah.
Right.
Like, you can't, like, because the truth is there's been plenty of queer films that have existed before this one, you know what I mean, that have been made by plenty of other folks that did not get the press that this one did. Yeah. But this one went through some sort of, like, sanitizing, like approval process that allows it to be, like, kind of a big deal right now. Like, they're talking about it on The Bachelor. Like, they're getting all this press, like Billy Eichner's running around doing it all, you know what I mean?
I think the thing that's different about this one than a lot of the others is it didn't necessarily, like, sanitize the characters. Like, I think a lot of other, like, queer cinema in the past has been stories about historical gay people that everybody knows, right? Like the Harvey Milks and the Marsha P. Johnsons and all that. And they also were, like, maybe acted by queer people, but not necessarily like produced and put together by queer people.
Yeah.
And you could tell that this movie, obviously Billy Eichner is gay, but you can tell that the writing team, the acting, the lighting, like everything, you can tell. I mean, I think it's really important to remind people that the entire cast is queer.
Yeah.
Right? Even the ones playing the straight roles.
Yeah.
And to me, that was really cool because so many times we have this conversation and it comes up every single time you see a new Hollywood movie where there's a straight guy playing a gay character.
Yeah.
And there's like conversations ad nauseum about how straight people shouldn't play queer characters. And then it's like, well, it's called acting, isn't it? Right. And it's the same exact bullshit that you get with like Halle Berry as, Little Mermaid.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And so it's the whole like, well, if we only wanted people who were this thing to do the movie and play this role, that's not really acting. That's just putting people on camera. You don't want every movie to be, a documentary.
Yeah.
But I think what was really cool for this movie is they flipped the script on it.
Yeah.
And they were like, you know what? Y'all have been playing us for so long. Let me play y'all and see how ridiculous it looks, right? And it was like almost the straight couples were almost a parody, and you could kind of see that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, Guillermo Diaz plays a lot of straight people. He's playing a lot of straight.
does.
Matter of fact, he plays
Mostly serial killers, right?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about him from the Dave Chappelle from Half Baked. You know what I mean?
Wrap it up, B.
Yeah, exactly. Like what
My most used gif of all time.
Well, that's not from Half Baked. That's from Chappelle Show. Yeah. But no, like I feel like I agree. I think the casting was definitely, I think there was a lot of things about this movie that was a breakthrough. I think if I'm just a moviegoer watching it, I think there was a lot of things that in terms of it being just a straightforward rom-com, I think if I judge it against other rom-com, I've seen better, but I've also seen a lot worse.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
So I think that's where I kind of land on it because
I definitely think the com is heavier than the rom. Right?
Yes,
Like,
agreed. Yes,
it was a rom-com that was actually funny and not just like a couple lines that tickled you, but like laugh out loud, like spit. Like I was spitting, I was laughing so hard, right?
But
like,
see, this is why I think you need to see Forgetting Sarah Marshall, because this is what Nick Stoller does. Like
I feel like I saw it like on TBS one time.
Yeah,
maybe that's why, because they might have like.
Oh, they sanitized that. Yeah, they took that out. But I mean, like, we're talking about, because I'm sitting here watching this, and there's a lot of beats in this that are a lot like Forgetting Sarah Marshall, where you have, I think it's Jason Segel, and
I also just don't like him. So
that's fair. That's fair. But I'm like, there's a lot of beats in it that felt familiar. And for me, watching this, it felt just a lot like a Nick Stoller movie, where I was just like, oh, okay, this is a Nick Stoller movie. But I think for me, the bigger success is that the point of what they're making is that, and I think we've all said it, I think about this a lot with black film, is that like black films can be the gamut. They don't have to all be great. You know what I mean? They could be horrible, good, bad, because we've had a lot of times for people to make a lot of like mediocre films like that run the gamut. Like every black movie doesn't have to be good. And I think the same could be said of Queer Stories. I don't think this was bad by any means, but I definitely don't think it was like, it did not blow me away, I would say.
It's not going to get any Oscar noms.
Yeah, no. And it's funny, even though he had a long monologue in the middle where I'm like, oh, you shooting for the Oscars with this one.
But I actually have to say, one of the things that I wouldn't say bothered me, but if we do talk a little bit about the casting, is that like you keep saying the word sanitize, and I think that's perfect for what they did with one of the characters. Again, spoiler free. T.S. Madison is known for being a fireball, a spitball, like somebody who pulls no punches, says exactly what's on her mind, has a very filthy mouth, which I love. But again, like, how many F-bombs were in this movie? And I don't think she said one of them.
Not one.
And so, like, I feel like they kind of, like, made a little bit of a caricature of her as well. And the fact that, like, she was probably brought on to be quote-unquote comedic relief and, like, the like over-the-top clown, and like I didn't see any of that at all from her, right?
It was a very subdued performance.
Yeah. And again, like Miss Lawrence was known on Real Housewives of Atlanta for being the over-the-top, tongue-in-cheek, extremely swishy gay black man, right? And it's almost like, did they remove that from these two characters because the other characters were taking control of that, or because they didn't want to criticize for inclusion of, oh, you only had one black trans woman in the movie and you made her the butt of all the jokes, right? Because we are the worst when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like, if you think black people are hard on Black Panther or black cinema or any of like Tyler Perry or any of that, queer people, like, it's not a competition, but we're way worse, right? Because we make it a whole personality to shit on people and like representation and what they did to us and all that kind of stuff, right?
What would you rate this movie of 5 stars?
See, I had it ready for a 10-star rating, but not a 5-star.
We'll just divide it in half.
Know, right? I hate saying this because I really wanted it to be more, because like I love Billy Eichner, I love his comedy.
Your rating is your rating. It's okay.
I had to give it a 3.5. Like, I liked it. I would definitely watch it again. I'm definitely going to watch it again with my husband.
Yeah.
But it's not something that I necessarily need to like buy in my Blu-ray library, you know?
We are very close. I gave it a 3.25. Oh, okay. So I think
we could go that fraction.
Oh, 100%. like there's all the bets are on.
1987. I give it a pie rating. 3.14.
3.14. That's kind of low.
No, definitely 3.5.
Yeah, I think it, like, for me, it was 3.25. I think, like, the parts of it that got to me was the tropey, predictable parts. And I understand that this is a romantic comedy. And I will say that anyone who likes rom-coms, who is also inclusive and a tolerant human, will love this movie. This will be, you will gobble it up. It will be great. For me,
I already texted my mom, like, you're going to love this movie, right? Like,
yeah. So tell your friends that. But in terms of just me just expecting more, and I think that's probably wrong on my behalf to expect more of this movie, but I think the ways in which it was marketed kind of pushed me in that direction. And I watched it and I was like, yeah, it's a movie, you know? Make 100 of them, I don't care. And with that, Leaving the Theater is a production of OhitsBigRon Studios. Thomas Tyra of Bias Studios mixes the show. Thank you, Tom. Show art from Heather Wilder. Theme music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. For more information about Bros or Ben, check out our show notes. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at OhitsBigRon. That's at OhitsBigRon. You can find out more about this show and other OhitsBigRon Studios shows by following us on Instagram at OhitsBigRon Studios and on Twitter at OhitsBigRon Stew. That's STEW. Leave It at Theater will be back soon. Thanks for listening. And thanks, Ben, for being on the show.
Of course.